Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Field Experiences. I'm Leanne. I'm a polyamory educator. I run a page called Polyphilia at Polyphilia blog on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. And basically, I'm going to be talking all about threesomes today and answering your questions about threesomes as well. So while people are filing in, I figured that I would just talk about the last time I had a threesome. And I'll give you guys some time to come up with questions to ask me, and then I'll just randomly pick from the comments. So if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. Also, in case you didn't catch this in the event brief, there is a group chat that's happening after this live stream is over. So in an hour's time, I'll be hopping on the Field app, and I'll be joining you guys in a group discussion about threesomes and group sex in general. So if you haven't joined the group chat yet, I'd highly recommend you join it now, so you can get right into the meat of the discussion after this live stream. But yeah, to the last time I had a threesome. I've actually had more foursomes recently, but the last threesome I had was a month ago. So I had just moved into my new home that I'm in right now, which is all blurred out because privacy. And it was with my boyfriend and my girlfriend's husband. So both of them helped me move in. My girlfriend was working that day, so she wasn't there. And then like after we were all done moving in, we had dinner and we celebrated with a threesome. That was super fun. And yeah, both my boyfriend and my girlfriend's husband are bi, and so fun times for everyone involved. My first ever threesome was when I was, I think, 19. I was with my boyfriend at the time, and he had a friend of his who he used to sleep with, and basically she was interested in both of us, and so we had a threesome. And at the time I was still like very new to kind of coming out as bisexual, and that experience was really helpful for me to solidify that yes, indeed, I was attracted to women, and I was also really into group sex. And here I am now, almost a decade later. So yeah, I'm just gonna look in the comments now. Oh wow, people are joining from all around the world. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. Um, yeah, thank you. It is a pretty cool story. The first question is probably gonna be like just a pretty commonly asked one, so I'll pick on that one. How to Find a Unicorn by NFL Quell. Sorry if I mispronounced that. So for those of you who don't know what a unicorn is, I figure I'll explain. Although the trouble with the word unicorn is that I think it's defined differently in different circles, but broadly speaking, a unicorn is basically a single person who is down to join a couple, either for sexy fun times, or in kind of the polyamory world, sometimes like a three-person triad relationship. But because we're going to be talking about threesomes today, I'm going to be focusing on like the swinging definition of unicorn, which is just like someone who's down like for a threesome. And unicorns are usually, when a couple are looking for a unicorn, they're usually referring to a single bisexual woman, but doesn't have to be. A unicorn could be a man. Like some people use the word dragon to refer to like bi men who are down for threesomes. Don't know why. Don't know why there's a need to gender it, because non-binary people exist too. But sometimes like unicorns don't have to be bisexual. Like if it's like a gay couple or a lesbian couple like seeking like another man or another woman to join them, or like two people who are non-binary who are just looking for someone else to have fun with, right? So I don't think there's a need to gender it, but at any rate, a unicorn is just basically a single person who is down to join a couple. So let's go with that definition for the purposes of this live stream. So how to find a unicorn? I mean, Unicorns are out there. There are always people who are, down for threesomes. But I think the trouble with that a lot of couples have with finding like someone who is happy to have a threesome with them is that a lot of couples don't approach it the right way. Because here's the thing, right? As a bisexual woman, like I know that couples who are looking to have a threesome with me are a dime a dozen. And so it's unappealing for me if a couple is approaching me and then just giving me a laundry list of things for me to do and like a list of fantasies that they want me to fulfill for them and not really asking about my experience or my desires. And so, it's not so much like how to find a unicorn because they're definitely out there and they're not as rare as people like to think. It's just about approaching them in an honest and respectful and ethical way. And as someone who, has happily joined couples for threesomes, like I've had some good experiences, I've had some bad experiences. And, I've also been on the other side, right? Like as kind of part of a couple, getting with other people of different genders. So basically it's all about being upfront about what you're looking for, being kind of mutually respectful and, considering the other person rather than objectifying them and, uh, yeah, basically seeing them as, projecting a role onto them that you're expecting them to fulfill, rather than, working together and collaborating on an experience that is going to be, mutually beneficial for everyone involved, right? So yeah, so the question isn't so much how to find one, but like how to treat one respectfully and have them stick around. So as someone who identifies as a unicorn, yeah, there's plenty of us. It's just going with the right approach. But I'm sure there are going to be more questions along these lines that I can get into in more detail. But I figured I'd get that one out of the way because, there were loads of couples who were seeking unicorns and loads of people who asked them the question. So that's going to be, yeah, figured I'd start with that one. So let's have a look at some more questions. Okay. Great name. Dangerously Dramatic Eyes asks, how do you establish great bedroom agreements between established partners for threesomes? So, I mean, I think this is going to have to depend on the relationship and what you're looking for, I suppose. So, this is a very kind of difficult question to answer in general terms. But, I would suggest like before going to kind of look out for like for other people, instead of just kind of winging it. Before you do that, sit down and have an honest conversation about your respective desires. And I think the best approach to go about it is to think about for yourself like what you want, right? Independent of what your partner wants. And then to come together and see whether there's some overlap. Because I often see in situations like this, because like when kind of couples are like dating together, they, maybe like one or both parties assume that the other person wants the same things that they do. And that falls apart very quickly when they actually find themselves in a threesome situation, and then they're like, "Oh, you wanted to go about this in a different way? Oh, I didn't know. Oh, why aren't you going to do this the way I want to do?" And then there's a lot of conflict from that. So, thinking and planning beforehand will probably help prevent quite a lot of conflict. So, yeah, think about your desires independent of your partners, and then come together and see where there is overlap, see where there's kind of like room to discuss, and like open each other's eyes on like what you want, because sometimes your partner might suggest something like a fantasy that they have or something that they want to do that you never thought about before, right? So, just it's as simple as having a sit down conversation and being very radically honest about like, yeah, what you're looking for, because there are many different ways to have a threesome and there are many different potential outcomes of a threesome. Right? Some people have threesomes because they want all the attention, right? You want multiple hands, multiple bodies on me, right? Some people will do it because they want to watch, right? They have a fantasy, they want to watch their partner with someone else, it turns them on. Some people want to be watched, right? They want to kind of, they have a little exhibitionist streak, they want to perform for their partner in some way. or it's just like a situation of like everyone taking turns, like pleasuring each other and having a great time. So yeah, depending on like what you're looking for and kind of what you have in mind, yeah, like two people could both want a threesome but want very different things out of the threesome. So it's very important to clarify that, if you're approaching this as a couple, as established partners. And then the next step when you're looking for someone is, instead of finding someone to like slot into kind of whatever overlap you've got, you do the same thing again. Talk to the third person. What are your desires? What are your needs? What are your expectations? What are your fantasies? And then again, see whether there's overlap between the three of you, right? Because if you're just kind of going to someone and being like, here are all the things that we want to do, we want you to do them. The other person's like, well, what if I don't want to do that? And why are you asking me all of these questions and not asking me in response, right? So very like people in the polyamorous community in particular talk a lot about couple privilege. So kind of couple privilege is like, I mean, it's just the general kind of societal structure that like caters to kind of couples and people in like kind of coupled relationships, above those who are single or like unattached, I suppose. And so, couple privilege comes into play with threesomes sometimes if, yeah, a couple makes an assumption that a single person will just do whatever they want, or that, their needs are more important than the single person's needs. And particularly if a couple are not in a very secure relationship and they feel like a third person coming in is, they view them as a threat. And, any kind of desires that the other person has is going to jeopardize like whatever plans they've got, then that's going to create a lot of potential for conflict. So, obviously you can't, there is no like foolproof way to, ensure that you will have had all the necessary conversations and that nothing bad will happen when you actually get to it. But, there are some strategies and conversations that you can have that will probably prevent a lot of potential conflict. It won't eradicate the potential of it completely, right? Icky feelings still happen. Sometimes things don't go as planned, right? But yeah, like having those conversations ahead of time will definitely really help. So I think, like just to, like apart from talking about your fantasies, you can also talk about like what's on and off the table, right? Like what do you want to do, but also what do you not want to do? What do you not want to see? And again, this also has to be negotiated with the third person, right? Some couples have very strict agreements on like what is and isn't allowed, like when they're like like having a threesome with a third person. But if the third person is like, I don't want to have so many restrictions placed on me. Like I remember once having a threesome with a couple who told me that I wasn't allowed to kiss either of them. And like, yeah, just kind of there were like some very specific acts that would have been very difficult for me to avoid, or it would feel unnatural for me to have to deliberately avoid them. And ultimately I decided not to do it because I was like, you know what, if I have to listen to all of these rules, I'm not going to have a fun time. So that's a no from me. But someone else might feel differently. Someone else might be like, oh, I don't want to, like, I'm not allowed to kiss either of them. That's hot. Whatever floats your boat, right? But you have to be upfront about these things, so people can approach the situation with informed consent, right? Approaching the situation with wide eyes, or like eyes wide open. So yeah, hope that helps. Dangerously dramatic eyes. Let's have a look at more questions. How to be safe when having a threesome? What about STDs and how to approach a serious question? So again, same question from NFL Quell. So the thing about sex is that I don't think there's like a foolproof way to be like 100% safe. You can only ever have safer sex, right? You can have protection, you can get tested regularly, etc., etc. But STIs are a thing. STIs happen. It's like, going outside, you might catch a cold, right? If you're driving, you might crash your car. You can definitely do things like put on a seatbelt and, watch the road so then you don't crash your car. But stuff happens sometimes. And, on my page, I very much advocate for, like STI prevention, but also STI destigmatization, because it's yeah, like STIs are very common. Most people will have them at least once in their lifetime. Herpes, for example, most people have it. HPV, most people catch it at least once in their lifetime. It's like it's a thing. But so I'm not saying like don't try and like not be safe. But there is no way for you to be 100% safe. That's just a risk that you have to take, and you have to decide kind of like how much risk you want to expose yourself to. Right. But the really nice thing about being non-monogamous is that it's been statistically shown that non-monogamous people tend to be much more kind of sexually responsible than monogamous people. There was a study conducted in 2015 that showed that non-monogamous people are no more or less likely to contract an STI than monogamous people, and that's because we're very honest about the sex that we're having. We're very honest about how frequently getting tested. Whether we're using protection with people, etc., etc. The number of partners that we have, right? We're much more likely to have these conversations than people in monogamous relationships who, and some of them cheat, right? And if someone's cheating, they're less likely to tell their partner about it and the kind of sex that they're having. So if you're like in community with other non-monogamous people and you're having these conversations about, like sexual safety and testing and things like that, you're probably in the right hands already. If that's something that is on your mind, like when you're approaching people, yeah, like if things are getting steamy, if you feel like the night is going in a certain direction, then bring it up. When did yeah, like how like when did you last get tested? What were the results? Here are my results. And just it doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be like a right, let's have a serious conversation now about STIs and testing. It's like, you just bring it up as part of like just your general conversation about like, oh, what do you want to do together? So yeah, like I think it's definitely a serious topic, right? But you don't have to approach it in a serious way. And the more casually you approach it, the less kind of stigma there will be around having that conversation. So let's have a look at more questions. Thank you, NFL Quell. Fabio Ferreira, how do you approach someone as a couple? Have you done that? So I mean, on the dating app field, it's much easier to approach someone as a couple because you can pair your profile with someone else and match with people. And the really nice thing about dating apps, I personally find, as opposed to like just dating like in the wild, is that if you swipe right on someone and they also swipe right and you match, you already know that there's at least some interest there, right? If you've matched and you're talking to each other, there's already at least like a mutual attraction that you can then explore further, as opposed to in real life. If you're, I don't know, in a bar, a club, you might not even know if someone is down for a threesome, whether they're attracted to one of you, both of you, neither of you, right? So I've been using dating apps for like a really long time, and so I think it's much easier to like approach someone on an app like field, because if they're on the app and they've matched with you, then they're probably going to be into the same things that you are. And beyond that, it's just about establishing what exactly you want to do, right? Like you might all want a threesome, but like how do you want to go about the threesome? And those are the specifics that you'll need to work out. But yeah, I mean, approaching someone, if I was being approached by a couple, what kind of things would I want to see? I probably want to see them asking me about my desires, right? Like I said earlier, rather than giving a laundry list of fantasies they want me to fulfill, asking me like, hey, like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to get out of a threesome? Oh, well, that actually lines up with what we've been looking for. We've been looking for someone who wants to do X, Y, Z, right? And then after that, it's just like, okay, what are your boundaries? Like, what are your limits? Like, what do you not want to do? Like, are there any kind of like hard limits? Like, do you want to do you want to do this as a one-time thing, or do you want to, like, if things go well, right, do you want to continue seeing us? Right, because like some people like want to do like a one night stand and then it's over, and some people want to be like, hey, if things go well, let's keep seeing each other, let's like have like regular threesomes, let's make this a thing, let's be friends with benefits, let's be more, right? So yeah, kind of asking these questions and getting that out of the way would be really helpful. So yeah, I mean, have I done that? Have I approached someone like as a couple? Sure, you know, like I'm on field. I have a partner kind of like paired with me, and yeah, like you know, I match with people, and you know, while we're like getting to know each other, and you know, asking just general questions about like what each other's desires are, which is really easy to do on an app like Field because you know you have your desires and interests listed very explicitly in your profile, right? So you can point out these things and like, oh, looks like we're both into FFM. I don't know, and then have a conversation about that. Um, yeah, and then it's just like you know saying what I did earlier, like yeah, asking each other like what you both want, seeing whether there's overlap, and then kind of going ahead and asking them for a drink and kind of seeing where things take us. So yeah, that's how I would like to be approached by a couple, and that's how I have personally approached people as part of a couple myself. If that helps. Um, so let's see. No Chill Will asks, do you have any books or resource recommendations about threesomes and couple privilege? So I mean, a lot of books on non-monogamy and polyamory will definitely have a chapter about threesomes and couple privilege. In terms of books that I've personally enjoyed, I really liked The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory by Denica Winston. She also is one of the three hosts on the Multi-Amory podcast. So The Smart Girl's Guide to Polyamory, like despite the name, I think is actually a really great book for people of all genders. And I don't think that the book is like overly gendered towards women either. I think it's like a really universally applicable book. And yeah, like it does talk about threesomes and couple privilege to a quite yeah like a good extent. So I would really recommend that book. I think if you're looking for something shorter and kind of more lighthearted, there's a blogger called Paige Turner, which is a pseudonym, and she runs a blog called Polyland. And she once wrote a book, although it's kind of more like a pamphlet, to be honest, which is called A Geek's Guide to Unicorn Ranching, I think it's called. And she calls it unicorn ranching as opposed to unicorn hunting because I think she wants to like talk about how yeah like you know creating a ranch to welcome unicorns into rather than trying to hunt them down. I think she tries to make that this distinction, and yeah, so which I really like because you know I think ultimately if you try and kind of like approach people in a very aggressive way as opposed to create you know a very attractive and welcoming atmosphere for people to approach you, right, you know that's going to be a much better approach in my opinion. But yeah, like Geek's Guide to Unicorn Ranching by Paige Turner, it's much shorter, quite lighthearted. I enjoyed reading that. So yeah, and that talks about kind of threesomes and couples privilege. Other texts, I mean, you know, I also just highly recommend any of the kind of just general like kind of polyamory or non-monogamy 101 books. The Ethical Slut is probably the most popular one. And let me think. You can also follow like people on Instagram, like myself, a polyphilia blog. And yeah, like you know, loads of other creators on Instagram and TikTok and so on, who talk a lot about couple privilege. Hope that helps. So let's have a look at more questions. Mm-hmm. Oh, so not a question, but just I just wanted to reply to someone in the comments who said like there's an assumption that you can just decide not to have couple privilege. And yeah, you know, very true. Like the thing about couple privilege, just like any other type of privilege, like male privilege, white privilege, right? Um, it's just a thing that it's just a thing, right? And it's not so much how to like eradicate it, but how to mitigate it and how to be considerate of the presence of that thing. You know, just like hierarchy, right? I think we live in a very hierarchical society, or like at least a society that encourages hierarchy and competition, right? And so it's not so much like, you know, like I think people like when they say they're non-hierarchical, I think you know that's more of like a goal rather than you know like a reality. I personally aim to be anti-hierarchical rather than like non-hierarchical because you know at the end of the day, like I think it's very difficult to just eliminate all instances of hierarchy in my life. So similar to kind of couple privilege, right? Like I can't just for example, if someone is married and they're not planning on getting divorced, then there's a certain amount of couple privilege that they have to deal with. Or if someone is not out to their parents as polyamorous or non-monogamous, and they only have one partner who they take to all the as plus ones to events and to meet family and friends and things like that, then there's kind of privilege inherent in that. And yeah, like, with all due respect to people who are not ready to be out to family or don't want to have that conversation and so on, right? Like that's something that you have to be honest about with partners. And yeah, just something that you have to deal with and mitigate. And some people aren't down with that, and some people are okay with it. And it's just about finding the right people who are, yeah, who will like jive with that, basically. But yeah, no, just that comment is very much correct. Like yeah, just deciding to not have couples privilege is not really a thing. I think you can aim towards it, but like whether it is kind of achievable in practice will really have to highly depend on your individual circumstances and how heavily you are enmeshed with someone, right? Um, so let's have a look. Ooh, very interesting question. Brian Konish. Konish? Hope I'm pronouncing that right. My wife is interested in a hot husbanding fetish, which is new for us. How to approach others online. So this is very interesting because I haven't seen the word hot husbanding before, and I think it's the basically, yeah, like the Jenna Swat equivalent of hot wifing, which is what I see more often. So for those of you who don't know, and as far as I understand the term, which is my interpretation, kind of hot wifing is basically if you're like really into like watching your partner with other people and actively encouraging them to be with other people, so yeah, and getting something out of the experience. And yeah, like I've also kind of seen the words like wife sharing kind of be used in reference to hot wifing. And like there's also the term like cuckolding, which I think introduces a little bit more of like a humiliation kink element into it. But they're all kind of part of the same umbrella of, yeah, basically just enjoying, your partner being with other people and kind of wanting to facilitate those experiences, while not necessarily getting involved yourself, right? So yeah, what kind of whether you're like hot wifing or hot husbanding or hot spousing, let's try and be inclusive here, right? Yeah, like how do you approach others online? I mean, um, yeah, like on a dating app like Veal, then I would make that very clear in your profile about like what you're looking for. You can list your desires on Field and state like that. Yeah, like this is like what you want to do, and this is a fantasy of yours. And the way that Field works is like you can pair your profiles together, but you can't have like a couple profile, right? Like you're still ultimately swiping as individuals. So for like for your wife, right, like maybe on her profile she might say something like, hey, I'm here with my husband, I want to kind of facilitate kind of him like being with other people. I personally, maybe I don't want to be involved, maybe I want to watch, maybe I want to get involved a little bit, right, like want to facilitate the experience in some way. But yeah, like I'm looking for like people so I can like enjoy seeing my husband like enjoying himself with other people, right, as an example. And then for the husband, presumably for you, Brian, maybe like depends on like how much you kind of want to create those experiences for yourself. Like you have like a discussion with your wife about like how involved you want to be in that, right? Because some people like really get off to specifically facilitating the experience for their partner, right? Whereas some people don't mind their partner also kind of doing that, and then both of them like having those discussions themselves, like when it gets to it. So yeah, again, just have those conversations and like see what you want to do together. Yeah, and then beyond that, it's just kind of matching with people, and reading other people's profiles, like, right, if other people are like, oh, we're looking for a foursome, or we're looking for like like a threesome situation, that might not be what you're looking for, if one of you just wants to watch or just otherwise not be involved, right? So you have to find people who are also looking for a threesome and the specific kind of threesome that you're looking for. So hope that helps. So let's have a look at more questions. Um, Oh, great question. Netrum. What if the energy and attention is not evenly spread to all parties during the activity? How do you ensure that you do not feel left out? Great question. And I think this is probably like the most common concern that people have when they're having a threesome, right? Like, oh, like what if the other people like each other more than they like me and then I feel left out and like I'm just there, right? Again, some people might be into that, right? Like I said earlier, some people just like to watch, some people don't need to participate. I myself, right, like when I'm in a threesome and like there's like it's like super hot, but it's also like literally hot. Like sometimes I will literally step out and be like, you know what? I'm just gonna touch myself for a bit. I'm like, like I'm overheating. I need some water. You two continue. I'm gonna watch for a little bit, right? And I don't feel left out because I still, I'm actively, pulling back, enjoying kind of the view, right, and having a good time. But again, yeah, not everyone's into that. Like some people like want to make sure that like everyone's having a good time, and like like that the focus is kind of evenly distributed, so to speak. So, couple of things I think you can do both before and during the threesome. So before, have a conversation, right? Like have a conversation about like, yeah, like your fantasies, your boundaries, but also like what your concerns are, right? Like if you're like, oh, I'm really worried that I'll feel left out, then that's something that you would want to kind of flag to the other two people involved, and they can be mindful of that during the threesome, right? And like I think particularly if you're new to a threesome, sometimes the logistics of it can get very complicated. And so some people like, it's purely on accident. Like, you might be like having sex with one person and then like just forgetting that there's another person there that, maybe you could touch a little bit. My general advice for threesomes is like if you have a spare hand or a mouth, use it. But that can be difficult to all keep in your head at once, like right when you're in the moment and you're new to it, right? So I think it's also about like extending a little bit of grace to the other two people involved if you're suddenly feeling a bit left out. Like it doesn't necessarily mean they're not attracted to you. It doesn't necessarily mean that like, like you're like less good at this or, less attractive, like or whatever, right? It doesn't have to mean anything. Sometimes it's just complicated. It's just logistically complicated, and these two people can have their moment and then they'll turn their focus on you and then you can have your moment. Sometimes it's really nice to like join in, and if two people are like doing stuff together to like join in and do both of you do something to the third person and then swap, right? So yeah, like it's not so much like just like a pair of people doing something and then just like one just like being there. It's like, yeah, like maybe two people can do stuff to one person and then like it's very fluid, right? So something definitely something to talk about beforehand, right? Like bring up your concerns, bring up your insecurities and fears. Be very honest about these things, right? Because the more you can flag, the more people can be mindful of. And people aren't mind readers, so yeah, you have to be honest about these things. And then during, right, like if you feel that you're being left out, it's just as simple as just being like, hey, is there anything I can do, right? Like, oh, do you want me to like, yeah, like to like join in with like whatever you're doing, or like, oh, what about like how about we do this? And yeah, like, obviously this is going to be context dependent, right? Like if someone's like maybe like about to orgasm, maybe don't be like, hey, what about me? Probably not the best time to bring that up, right? But yeah, so this is going to have to be very yeah, context dependent. But yeah, I mean, I hope that helps. And over time, right, I think you get more comfortable with not having all the attention like focused on you. Like sometimes you can just enjoy the view. How like go and have some water. Hydrate, right? Decompress. Uh, and yeah, watch the other two people having a good time, right? Because yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're having a threesome and you're not comfortable watching your partner with someone else, you might have a rough time, is all I'm saying. So it's something that it's definitely good to learn to get comfortable with quickly. And it's not something you have to figure out right away, but if you're going to be dating together, you're going to be seeing a lot of that, right? So yeah, and that's actually like a side point I want to address. A lot of couples approach threesomes because they think it's the easy way like into exploring non-monogamy. And while I understand the logic behind that, it really depends whether you're actually comfortable watching your partner having sex with someone else, because some people aren't. and some people never are, and that's okay, you know. And in those cases, it's okay to date separately, you know, to have separate experiences. So, you know, like, you don't have to be comfortable watching your partner having sex with someone else. You know, you can do that and also happily practice non-monogamy. So, you know, separate dating is also an option, if you know, that's not your vibe, basically. But yeah, hope that helps in terms of like figuring out, yeah, not feeling left out, and you know, wanting to evenly spread the attention. um, okay. So okay, Dangerously Dramatic Eyes has asked another question, and they've sent it in two messages though. So if you, well, you can probably just like put up the first one, and I'll complete I'll complete the. There we go. The question is, what are red flags to look into when talking to a new couple? Was the second bubble. Great question. So I believe I've written an article on this on the Field blog about like things to look out for. You know, and how to be a unicorn, I think was the name of the article that I wrote for the Field blog. So if whoever's moderating this stream could find that article for me, that would be excellent while I talk. Yeah, so what are red flags to look for when talking to a new couple? So I think I already mentioned some. I think like one is if they're not focused on your desires at all and just focused on projecting a role onto you to fulfill, you know, for them, right? You know, if someone's like, okay, we're looking for a threesome, you match with us, great. We want you to do X, Y, Z, and you know, and then we wanted you to do X, Y, Z. Okay, we're hoping you're down with anal. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Like, you know, then you're just gonna be like, okay, what about me? What about my desires? I'm a whole person too, with my own desires in the situation. I don't exist to, you know, fulfill this list of things that you want to do, right? Like, if you have a very specific vision and you want someone who, you know, will 100% accommodate your request with no complaint, you know, you might have a hard time with that, right? Like, if you're looking for other people to deal with, because, you know, ultimately it's a negotiation, right? Some people have advised, you know, like finding a sex worker who is down with that, but still, you know, if you're looking for a sex worker and you're like, hey, here's our vision, can you accommodate this fantasy? That's still, you know, you still have to be mindful of the other person's needs and boundaries, and yeah, and consent, right? So, you know, if you have a very specific fantasy, maybe kind of, you know, like, and it's not going to be achieved through traditional means, then, you know, sex work is a good option. But yeah, I mean, depending on whether it's legal in your state or country or whatever, obviously. But I just want to throw that out there. That is an option. But anyway, yeah, red flags to look for in a couple. Sorry for going on tangents. Yeah, someone who you know, isn't kind of factoring your needs and desires as well as theirs, and yeah, like kind of positioning themselves like above you in a sense, because a threesome should be a collaborative project, so to speak. You know, you're all trying to facilitate pleasure for each other rather than facilitating pleasure for one person specifically or two people specifically, right? I think also red flags to look for are if, you know, for example, if the couple don't seem to be on the same page about what they want, right? Like, if you're talking to a couple and you're like, hey, I want to do these things, and then like they don't seem to be in agreement about like what they're looking for or what they want to do, then that would be something that I would look out for, right? It shows that they haven't had that conversation that I advise people do at the very start of this live stream, right? You know, then in that case, you'd be like, hey, you guys are cute, but seems like you got some stuff to figure out, right? And similar to, and on the same line as, you know, like them not being on the same page, watch out for if one person doesn't seem as comfortable as the other person. Because I unfortunately see the situation sometimes like more common with like you know, women, I suppose, like where sometimes I'll meet a couple and it's very obvious that the woman doesn't actually want the threesome and it's the man who's pressuring her into it. And there've even been situations where the woman, you know, advertises herself as queer, like on the app, but is actually straight, but wants to perform, because that's what her partner wants, right? He wants to see her like go down on a woman or make out with a woman or like whatever it is. And that's not something she actually wants to do, but feels like she has to because I don't know, like misogyny and pressure and whatever, right? Like, so I would definitely look for enthusiasm, in both halves of the couple. Because if one of them's like super down and, talking to you like during the day and then their partner's just there, like, a bit shy, a bit reserved, right? Like, ask like try and get them to be part of the conversation. Hey, what do you want to get out of this? But if you're sussing some kind of off vibes, if you feel like, someone isn't as down as their other partner and they're not on the same page, um, you know, might be a no-go. Would be a no-go. I've even kind of been in situations where, I've like, yeah, someone changes their mind in the middle of it. And then I've had to stop and be like, hey, is everything okay here? We don't have to continue this. And maybe, yeah, and then their partner would be like, oh, she's fine. Everything's fine. And I'd be like, no, no, no. Let's, yeah, let's make sure like everyone's like feeling good. Right. So it's, yeah, because like sometimes if you don't check in, if you don't do these check-ins and you're just kind of, you just kind of keep going, right? Like someone else might be feeling really out of it and not knowing what to do with the situation. So you have to be very aware throughout, right? That I think there's, just general there's a general responsibility that all of us need to take to make sure that like everyone is feeling comfortable and centered, and yeah, and fully consenting to the situation, right? And yeah, it isn't just the onus isn't just on the couple; it's also just everyone involved, right? Yeah, check in, talk about your boundaries, have a safe word if you need it, things like that. But yeah, I do have to talk about these like kind of slightly dark things because they do happen, unfortunately. Like women do get pressured into threesomes. And not just women, but generally women, right? Like I like, yeah, it can happen to anyone. But just in my experience, it has been women a lot of the time, feeling like they owe their partner a threesome, or that they're gifting a threesome to their partner for their birthday, or they need to make out with another woman, even if they're not even bi, right? Or even if they are bi, making out with women they are not attracted to, right? So, I think everyone deserves to advocate for their own pleasure. And, a reminder to everyone, but especially queer women, you do not owe your partner a threesome. You don't. So, yeah, red flags, right? Definitely if someone's looking like, unenthusiastic or like, feeling, you're getting the vibe that they're feeling pressured into it, for sure. Bring that up and be like, this is not a vibe. I'm out of here. Okay. Um, Hope that helps. Also, kind of other red flags, I think, are if they're placing quite a lot of rules on you. And this is kind of similar to like what I said about like the laundry list of things I'm not considering you. If they've got like too many kind of prescriptive things about like, oh, you're not allowed to kiss, or oh, you're allowed to do kind of oral, but like not penetration. Like penetration is like just an us thing, or I don't know. We can only do like kink stuff, but like not this other stuff, right? Again, this is going to depend on the individual. Like if your vision of how you want the threesome to go like aligns with their vision of how they want the threesome to go, awesome, excellent. But then also, like there have been situations I've been in where someone has stated, okay, we don't want this to happen, and I've been like, cool, I can do that. And then in the moment, like the other person like does, okay, you know what, I'm going to be more specific. So I'm going to tell you about the worst threesome I've ever had. So the worst threesome I ever had was in, I think, 2019. Basically it was with this couple who had never had a threesome before, but I met them at a sex party, and it was like, yeah, they were hot, we were vibing. And then, before like we had the threesome, like we sat down and kind of had a talk about it on the bed. And I was like, right, is there anything that you want to do or don't want to do? And they were like, oh, like we want to just like take turns like pleasuring each other. And I was like, great, down for that. Anything you don't want to do? And they were like, okay, like when it comes to like the guy like finishing, like his girlfriend told me, I want him to finish inside me. I don't want him to finish inside you. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's kind of not my thing to control, but sure, fine, I will do whatever. I mean, I should not have agreed to that in retrospect because that was out of my control. And that was also technically out of his control, right? Because sometimes if it feels too good and you can't, you can't control it, it happens. Which is exactly what happened because guess what? We were having sex and the novelty of the situation, and yeah, probably just kind of like how hot the whole situation was. Yeah, he finished with me, and his girlfriend got really mad at me and really mad at him, and I was just there like in the middle of this couple fighting, and it was really dramatic and not a vibe. So that's the worst threesome I've ever had. I ended up like running out of the room and just being like, I'm gonna go and like have a shower. I'm out of here. Bye. So that's kind of an example of yeah, like me agreeing to something that realistically I could not have agreed to. I could not have guaranteed or promised, right? Because I was just there. And yeah, it's very difficult to guarantee like where to finish or when to finish and things like that, right? Like don't set yourself up for failure, guys. You know? So yeah, so I guess that's another kind of like red flag. Like a kind of overly prescriptive rules that are setting yourselves up for failure. Don't do that. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left, so I'll probably answer like one or two more questions. And also just friendly reminder again that in 15 minutes time, I will be hopping on the Field app to join the group discussion, the chat that's happening after this. So if you want to join the group chat and talk further with me and some other people about threesomes, please join the group chat. Someone will put a link in the comments now. So let's have a look at more stuff. Hmm. Ooh. So this is just a more general question. I'm sure it depends a lot on the individuals, but any general tips asked by Rajanath. So yeah, general tips on threesomes. I think I said one earlier, which is if you have a spare hand or a mouth, use it. um, take breaks. I think there's this assumption that people have that like if you're having a threesome, you have to be like constantly engaged and constantly in it and stuff. But the really nice thing about group sex is that even if you personally need to take a break, the other people can continue. You don't have to be 100% involved all the time. In fact, when I had my first threesome when I was 19, at one point I was like with the girl, and then my boyfriend fully just went away and made a cup of tea. He was like, I'm feeling some green. I remember now. He was like, I'm feeling some green tea. Do you guys want some green tea? We were like, hell yeah. So we just went down on each other while he went and made a cup of tea. And he came back and we had a nice tea break. And then we continued the threesome. It was great. I had a very positive first threesome experience. But yeah, so don't be afraid to take breaks and sit out and have a drink or something. If that's what you're feeling in the moment, because sometimes it can get tiring. You can overheat. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of different things to coordinate, right? There's three of you. Like if you set out, you can, yeah, the other people can continue, or if all of you want to take a break and just cuddle for a bit, that's also fine. It like they're very fluid. I often find in group sex situations, like they tend to last for hours, but we're not like having sex the entire time. Like we'll probably be having sex for maybe like I don't know, like half the time. And the other half is like maybe some cuddling, maybe some massages, like some chatter, like some, taking a water break, right? That's all absolutely fine. You don't have to be like engaged. It's not like porn, right? Like you're not just like going at it for like a really long time. You don't have to. So yeah, check in with each other. So in line with that, right? Like if you're like, oh, I'm feeling a bit warm, how are you guys feeling? Like yeah, like how are we doing, like yeah, check in with each other's emotions and make sure like everyone's like still enjoying themselves and see if you need to change anything. Other general tips, look online for some positions that you want to try out in advance, because sometimes like if the logistics of it are very overwhelming, it's a good idea to like look up positions where like all three of you can be involved, right? And so yeah, there's loads of them, right? Like like the Eiffel Tower, or like what, I'm not going to list them, Google them. So yeah, do some preparation, have those conversations. It will prevent like a lot of potential confusion and conflict for sure. Hope that helps. Um, let's see. Ba, 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 ba. Um, Okay, Shoshana the Gerda. Hope that I'm pronouncing that right. How to feel at ease, safe, and aroused at the same time as a first time plus one for a couple, and also first time in the bedroom with another woman. Ah, okay. So this is someone who like is it's like a single person who is interested in having a threesome with a couple and also yeah exploring their sexuality with other women. So this is great because I remember, you know, when I first had threesome, like I was actually really terrified to sleep with women alone because I didn't know what the hell what the hell I was doing. And so threesomes felt like a very safe gateway for me to explore my sexuality while also not being completely out of my depth. And I've also met other queer women who, yeah, you know, like they use threesomes as a way to, you know, explore their sexuality, and also kind of get some guidance, like from other people. Like I've had threesomes where they've honestly just turned into sex workshops because, you know, I'd watch my partner like doing something to the other women, and I'd be like, "Whoa, how did you do that? Show me that," you know. And then they'd be like, "Oh yeah, so this is what you do with your fingers," and I'd be like, "Oh my god." You know, and and it's a really fun time, right? You can swap sex skills whilst you're at it. You know, it doesn't have to be like super passionate and sexy constantly. Sometimes it can just be fun. Sometimes it can just be pleasurable and a mutually kind of just yeah, like just a learning experience. But anyway, I'm on a tangent. So yeah, feeling at ease, safe, and aroused. I mean, I suppose this is going to depend on the individual again, right? But like, I think if you're like talking about your boundaries and your concerns and your desires right beforehand, right, is really going to help you ease some of those nerves because you know that the other people have that in mind and you know are like being considerate of your position, right? Um, and yeah, like if you're nervous about like you know being with another woman for the first time, that's fine. You know, it's okay to express that. Like I think it's better to be honest than to like act overconfident and pretend you know what you're doing when you don't. You know, and like, yeah, everyone has to start somewhere. So, um, yeah, I mean, you know, there's no kind of surefire way for you to be like, you know, like super into it like on the day, and you know, it might take some time for you to figure that out. But having those conversations beforehand and then just taking it easy and not having it like and not feeling like the pressure to like perform and just having a nice time and connecting authentically with other people is probably just going to be um my best advice for that situation. But you don't have to you know sometimes you don't get it right the first time and that's okay. You know, sometimes you don't meet the right people, that's fine too. You figure it out eventually, you know. I think the really nice thing about non-monogamy and relationships in general is that you're always learning and growing, and sometimes you have some good experiences and sometimes you have some bad experiences, but you're always learning. So um sorry, that was quite vague, but I hope that helps, right? Like I think rather than kind of putting pressure on yourself to be like I must feel you know, I must be aroused and I must feel comfortable is actually going to be counterintuitive to the situation sometimes because yeah, like I mean the same as like wanting to have an orgasm, right? The more you think about how much you want to have an orgasm, the less likely it's going to happen. Sometimes you just you know, you just need to be in the moment rather than in your head about it. Yeah. That's my general advice. Um Let's have a look at more questions. Okay, I'm just gonna put this question up because it's funny. Ellen Weaver asks, "Did you take anything from a couple as a keepsake?" uh, no, I think. What would I take? We're all naked. There's nothing to take. Like, what would I like? Save something up in a jar? I mean, okay, no. In all seriousness, I I mean, I've probably kept. Oh, I know. Oh, there was a couple. There was a couple. I had a threesome one time, and in the middle of the threesome, we took some Polaroids. So I still have those Polaroids. Some very sexy Polaroids of me, like tied up in rope, of me like kind of being pleasured by the guy, like while his girlfriend was taking the photo. So yeah, uh, yeah. So that's a keepsake. That I would consider that a keepsake. So that's one. And probably like stray underwear or something. Because yeah, I remember at a sex party once, like someone just left their stuff behind, and I did ask if they wanted it back, but they'd already traveled somewhere else, and they were like, "Oh, just keep it." So that, I guess. But I mean, most of the time, like things I take from couples are just good memories. Sounds cheesy to say. I remember a threesome that I had when I was at university, where the couple they cooked me a 3-course meal. They really went all out to treat me. And then yeah, like we ate and we talked, and then we had some time to like have a drink and chat, and then we went upstairs. Honestly, I feel like my life peaked at that point in time, like having this couple cook me a 3-course meal and then spoiling me with a threesome. That was great, and so that's why, like, even though I think being a unicorn is like really kind of treacherous territory, because a lot of couples don't know what they're doing, frankly. If you like, look through all the resources, read the article that I wrote about how to be a unicorn, and just generally just maintain like some awareness of, and of the red flags and kind of stuff like that. Um, you're gonna have a good time, because if you meet like the right people and you're all into the same stuff and you're vibing and you develop like a really authentic and genuine connection, you know, like that stuff is unbeatable. I think like threesomes have been such like an instrumental part to me, like yeah, just coming to terms with my sexuality and becoming more confident, like as a queer woman. I Yeah, like I was having group sex for quite a while before I felt confident enough to sleep with women alone. True story. And yeah, now I have threesomes with people of all configurations. Like I was part of like a lesbian orgy for my girlfriend's Valentine's celebration very recently. And like I had that threesome with my boyfriend and I met on move-in day. And yeah, like I go to sex parties, and I have threesomes there with people and foursomes and tensomes once. Like the possibilities are endless. And yeah, it's one thing that I genuinely feel is just such a huge part of non-monogamy that you know, people are missing out on, because you can have threesomes if you're single and like not in a monogamous relationship, but having a threesome with a partner or like partners that you love, and feel so like immensely connected to is honestly out of this world. I think, yeah. So I'm glad you're all interested in threesomes. I'm glad you're all, like yeah, curious and looking to have fun, and interested in giving pleasure, and receiving pleasure, right? Like this is the sexual revolution, right? This is what we're all here for. So all right. So with roughly 3 minutes left of this live stream, all I'm going to say is, once again, to plug the group chat. There is a group chat that you can join, which I'm going to hop onto immediately after this live stream, where yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing threesomes and group sex more with you guys. So yeah, I'm gonna be there for an hour, and then I'm gonna get on with the rest of my evening. But I love talking about threesomes. I'm gonna be answering more questions there. Yeah, and probably sharing more threesome stories, because I have so many. Like, I mean, I talked about like my first threesome, right? The one with like when my boyfriend like just went out for a cup of tea. I talked about the threesome on my move-in day. I talked about the worst threesome I ever had. But like, I have had so many threesomes over the years. I am gonna probably and also the one where I had the 3-course meal. So that's 4 threesome stories over the course of this hour, right? I have so many more. So yeah, I'm gonna be in the group chat. I'm gonna be talking about that, and yeah, I really hope that all of you join the app. Find your people, and treat people with respect. Communicate honestly, radically honestly, and yeah, just here to be good, giving, and game, and just have a good time. But yeah, so once again, yeah, please join the group chat. And as for like following me and stuff, you can find me on social media. I am on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all the platforms, at the same handle, Polyphilia Blog. So you can also check out my website and FAQ for more information on threesomes and group sex. I've done a lot of Q&As on this topic and workshops. And yeah, like I also just today actually like posted content about threesomes. What I talked about earlier about like women feeling pressured to have threesomes or like perform sexuality in a way that they don't personally desire. So that discourse is going on right now on my page on Instagram if you want to join in on that. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. And I've really enjoyed answering your questions. Feel free to ask me more on my page, and also in the group chat, which I will be joining very, very shortly. So yeah, once again, I'm Leanne. I run Polyphilia blog. Hope to see you in the group chat. Hope to see you also in the future. Thank you so much.